For millennia, the Galactic Council considered itself invincible. Its fleets were unbeatable, its technology unmatched, its authority unquestionable, until a single human ship changed everything. The HSS Indomitable not only destroyed the mighty GCS Peacekeeper, it exposed a truth that shook the entire galaxy. The age of a civilization does not guarantee its supremacy. While alien diplomats frantically debate how to contain the human threat, one uncomfortable question echoes through the corridors of power. What if everything they believed about technological and military superiority was fundamentally wrong? Get ready to discover how humanity turned its supposed technological lag into the greatest strategic advantage the galaxy has ever seen. This is not just another story of interstellar conflict. It is a tale of how underestimating humans may be the last mistake a civilization makes. The sound of hyperspace still echoed through the empty corridors of what was once the pride of the Galactic Council. The wreckage of the GCS Peacekeeper floated silently through the vacuum of space, a mute testament to humanity's power. The news spread to the farthest reaches of the galaxy at the speed of a supernova. A single human ship, the legendary HSS Indomitable, had done the impossible. It wasn't just a military victory, it was a clear message to all species that had ever underestimated Earthlings. In the halls of power, in the space bars of commercial stations, in the farthest colonies, everyone whispered about how that battle would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Hazari, known for their aggression, for the first time in their millennia-long history, tasted the bitter sting of fear. At the edges of known space, representatives from thousands of civilizations gathered in emergency sessions. The Zelnari, with their characteristic strategic insight, were the first to grasp the profound implications of this event. In their meditation chambers, the reptilian elders debated fiercely on how such a young species had managed to develop technology capable of rivaling the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. The preliminary reports were even more disturbing. The HSS Indomitable had not used any unknown or revolutionary technology. It had won only through tactics, determination, and what humans called courage. This fact caused even greater concern among the Council species. How do you defend against an enemy who turns their own limitations into advantages? The Tariven, ethereal beings known for their ability to perceive the currents of fate, convened an extraordinary conclave. Their future projections, always accurate, now showed only chaos and uncertainty. The human variable had introduced an unpredictable element into their perfect equations. In the crystalline chambers of their floating temples, the most powerful seers desperately tried to find a path that would not lead to total war. But every simulation, every prophecy, every calculation only confirmed what they feared most. The era of the Galactic Council's unquestionable supremacy was over. Humanity was not just a new piece on the board, it had flipped the game board over. In the depths of Sulari space, Grand Arbiter Noltar watched recordings of the battle for the 1000th time. His ancient eyes, which had witnessed the birth and death of stars, could not fully comprehend the audacity of the human strategy. The way the HSS Indomitable had exploited the weaknesses of the Peacekeeper, how it had turned every disadvantage into an opportunity, was something that defied millennia of military doctrine. The Sulari, proud of their role as guardians of galactic order, now found themselves forced to question centuries of tradition. Traditional diplomacy, veiled threats, subtle power games, none of this seemed to work with humans. At the central station of the Galactic Council, the once silent corridors now buzzed with frantic activity. Diplomats from all species rushed from one meeting to another, trying to form alliances, seeking guarantees, looking for some way to contain the threat humanity posed. The oldest members of the Council bitterly remembered how they had ridiculed the early warnings about the military potential of Earthlings. Now those same dismissed reports were being obsessively studied, every detail analyzed for any weakness that could be exploited. But the more they studied, the clearer it became. Humans did not play by the established rules of galactic warfare. Interstellar communication networks exploded with theories and speculations. Some species began openly questioning the Galactic Council's effectiveness in maintaining peace. Others proposed immediate alliances with Earth, recognizing that it was better to have humans as friends than as enemies. On the frontier worlds, where the Council's influence had always been weaker, traders and smugglers were already beginning to establish secret routes to human territories. The fear of the Council, which for so long had maintained order in the galaxy, was rapidly being replaced by a new kind of respect. One born not from intimidation, but from a reluctant admiration for what a single human ship had managed to accomplish. Amid all this political chaos, an uncomfortable truth began to emerge. The destruction of the Peacekeeper had not just been a demonstration of military strength, it had been an act of justice. The Hazari, long protected by the Council's policy of non-interference, had finally found an opponent who was not intimidated by their reputation. The human colonies they had attacked, thinking they would remain unpunished as they always had, were now avenged. And this revenge had not come through an entire fleet or a coalition of worlds. It had come through a single ship, commanded by a captain who refused to accept that some species were above the law. This realization sent chills down the spines of the oldest members of the Council, for it suggested an even more disturbing question. How many other injustices had they allowed in the name of galactic stability? The Galactic Council's space station, a colossal structure rivaling small moons in size, pulsed with a nervous energy never seen in its millennia of existence. In the vast central hall, where representatives of thousands of civilizations gathered, to decide the fate of entire star systems, the hologram of the HSS Indomitable hovered like a threatening ghost. Its silhouette, projected in full scale, made even the largest warships of the attending species seem insignificant. The emissary archon of the Zelnari, his scales subtly changing color with each contained emotion, observed the reactions of his peers with his ancestral eyes. Every movement, every whisper, every exchanged glance between the representatives told a story of fear barely disguised as indignation. In the upper galleries, reserved for observers and advisors, dozens of military tactics specialists from different species debated in low voices the details of the battle. Smaller holograms showed, in an infinite loop, the crucial moments of the confrontation. How the Indomitable had used the Peacekeeper's own mass against it. How it had turned the limitations of its weapon systems into tactical advantages. How it had predicted and circumvented each countermeasure that should, theoretically, have turned the human ship into space dust. The Tariven, usually so confident in their predictions of the future, appeared especially disturbed. Their ethereal forms, typically soft and fluid, showed distortions that revealed their discomfort with the unpredictability of events. The Grand Afi, Arbiter Noltar, his millennial presence emanating an aura of authority that made even the oldest species feel young, remained in complete silence. His eyes, which had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations, focused not on the hologram of the human ship, but on the reactions of those present. In his 1,000 years of service to the Council, he had never witnessed such a combination of fear and fascination. The Hazari, usually so ready to demand immediate retaliation against any affront, remained remarkably quiet. Their defeat had not only been military, it had been psychological. The certainty of their superiority, cultivated over centuries, had been shattered along with their war fleet. The diplomat Vazith of the Karath was the first to break the heavy silence that dominated the main chamber. His facial tentacles, usually undulating in hypnotic patterns that helped emphasize his arguments, now moved in erratic spasms that betrayed his agitation. His voice, amplified by the chamber's communication systems, carried an urgent tone that made even the most inattentive representatives straighten up in their seats. The message was clear. Humanity was not just another emerging species to be controlled or manipulated. It was an existential threat to everything the Council represented. Not because of its technology, which was still considered primitive by the standards of older civilizations, but because of its complete refusal to accept the limitations that other species considered absolute. Ambassador Shantar of the Tariven, her ethereal form shimmering with colors that expressed deep concern, presented projections that caused many of those present to momentarily lose control of their physical forms. The simulations showed scenarios where humanity, in response to containment attempts by the Council, developed technologies and tactics that no known civilization had considered possible. "They don't think like us," her melodious voice echoed through the chamber. "Where we see insurmountable limits, they see challenges to be overcome. Where we impose restrictions based on millennia of tradition, they question not only the rules, but the very foundations that support them." It was at this moment that the Grand Arbiter Noltar finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying the weight of countless eras of experience. His eyes, glowing with an intensity that made many of those present look away, focused on the hologram of the Indomitable. "The mistake," he began, each word measured with millennial precision, "was not underestimating the military capability of the humans. It was assuming that they would operate within the parameters we consider civilized." His words caused a wave of murmurs that spread through the chamber like ripples in a lake. "They are not barbarians," he continued. "They are something much more dangerous. They are innovators. We cannot fight them with brute force, for that will only make them stronger. We cannot negotiate with them using our traditional tactics, for they see through our millennia-old diplomacy as if it were glass." The silence that followed the Grand Arbiter's words was different from the previous one. It was no longer a silence of shock or fear, but one of growing understanding. The implications of his words reverberated through the chamber like waves of dark energy. To survive the threat that humanity represented, the Galactic Council would need to do something it hadn't done in millennia. It would need to change. In the upper levels of the station, where security systems kept records of all procedures, a series of algorithms quietly began compiling data. Preliminary analyses indicated that this meeting would mark a turning point in galactic history. What none of the attendees realized, however, was that their deepest fears were already being realized. The very prospect of facing humanity was already forcing the Council to evolve in ways it had never considered necessary. In the depths of the Galactic Council's space station, in a chamber so ancient that its security systems were considered legends by many species, Grand Arbiter Noltar met with a select group of strategists. The air was heavy with the weight of decisions that would change the fate of entire civilizations. Holograms detailing trade routes, intelligence reports, and behavioral analyses of human society floated in the air like constellations of information. The Zelnari, masters of psychological warfare, presented disturbingly accurate simulations of how different types of economic pressure would affect human colonies. Each scenario was more elaborate than the last, all sharing a common goal. 2. Destroy humanity without firing a single shot. The first phase of the plan was already in motion before the meeting even ended. Through the vast communication networks of the Council, decrees began to be disseminated. Total galactic trade embargoes against any civilization that maintained relations with humans. The Sulari, with their millennial influence over major trade routes, would ensure that even the most basic antimatter supply became inaccessible to the Earth colonies. The impact would be devastating, or at least that was what the projections indicated. What the analysts could not foresee, however, was how a species that had already overcome seemingly impossible limitations would react to this type of pressure. Some of the oldest advisors recalled with discomfort how similar attempts at economic containment in the past had only stimulated humanity's capacity for innovation. Meanwhile, in the dark taverns and spaceports of the Outer Rim, agents of the Council began to spread rumors and tempting offers. Bounty hunters of all species were receiving lucrative contracts, not to eliminate specific targets, but to create chaos. Sabotaging critical facilities, spreading disinformation, promoting internal conflicts, all carefully planned to appear as a natural consequence of human expansion across the galaxy. The Hazari, still bitter from their defeat, offered their best warriors for these operations. Their thirst for revenge would be useful, as long as it could be controlled and properly directed. The information war began with a subtlety that would have impressed even the masters of manipulation, the Tariven. Through the galactic communication networks, carefully constructed narratives began to circulate. The destruction of the GCS Peacekeeper was no longer portrayed as a battle, but as a brutal act of terrorism against a peace ship. Historical records were subtly altered, inserting incidents that never happened, painting humanity as a naturally violent species impossible to civilize. The Zelnari, experts in psychological warfare, ensured that each new story seemed to emerge from independent and reliable sources. On the surface, the Galactic Council maintained a facade of diplomacy and open dialogue. Ambassadors continued to attend meetings with human representatives, discussing agreements and treaties that would never be implemented. But behind the scenes, a cold technological war was being orchestrated with surgical precision. Any civilization that shared technological advancements with Earth would face not only economic sanctions, but also complete ostracism from the galactic community. The goal was clear: to keep humans technologically isolated, forcing them to rely on systems that the Council considered safe and controlled. Grand Arbiter Noltar, watching the unfolding of his plans through real-time data feeds, couldn't suppress a feeling of unease. In his millennia of existence, he had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, each following predictable patterns of development and eventual stagnation. But humans, they seemed to operate outside any established logic. Every obstacle they encountered was not only overcome, but served as a catalyst for even more impressive advances. An uncomfortable doubt began to form in his millennia-old mind. What if this elaborate containment plan ended up having exactly the opposite effect of what was intended? In the depths of space controlled by the Council, a network of sensors began detecting strange movement patterns. Unregistered ships appeared and disappeared from radar like ghosts, leaving only energy traces that defied analysis. Preliminary reports suggested that some human colonies, supposedly isolated by embargoes, seemed to be thriving even more than before. The plan to slowly suffocate humanity was in full swing, but an unsettling question echoed through the halls. Of power. Who was really being cornered? The same tactics the Council planned to use against humans might very well be creating an invisible network of allies and resources that were completely beyond its control. The hyperspace jump opened like a glowing wound in the vacuum, and the HSS Indomitable emerged near Tartarus Prime. The secret base of the human alliance, hidden in a binary system where the stars naturally interfered with long-range sensors, was a testament to human ingenuity. While other species built their military installations in easily defensible locations, humans had chosen a place that most civilizations would consider impossible to inhabit. The lethal radiation from the two stars, which should have made the region uninhabitable, had been turned into a strategic advantage through technology the Galactic Council couldn't even imagine. Captain Roy Adams watched from the command bridge as his ship approached the hidden military complex. The Indomitable carried more than just the scars of its battle against the Peacekeeper. It carried with it a fundamental shift in the balance of power in the galaxy. In recent days, while navigating deep space avoiding the main trade routes, his crew had intercepted and decoded hundreds of transmissions from the Council. Each message revealed more details about the silent war being prepared against humanity. Adams couldn't help but smile. The Council was so focused on planning Earth's strangulation that it didn't realize how each of its actions only strengthened human resolve. The main hangar of Tartarus Prime was a hive of frantic activity when the Indomitable finally docked. Technicians and engineers had already begun studying the ship's combat data, while intelligence teams analyzed every second of the battle against the Peacekeeper. General Elias Grant, a veteran of countless conflicts against alien threats, awaited on the landing platform. His face, marked with scars from past battles, wore a serene expression that contrasted with the palpable tension in the air. He knew, better than anyone, that the real war was only just beginning. The Hazari had been the first test. Now it was the entire Galactic Council that needed to learn to respect humanity. In the main war room, three-dimensional holograms displayed in real time the movements of alien fleets across the galaxy. Predictive analysis systems, developed specifically to understand the behavioral patterns of different species, identified troubling trends. The Council was mobilizing resources on an unprecedented scale, but not for open war. They were preparing something much more insidious. Admiral Hoshino, known both for her strategic brilliance and her ability to think like the enemy, had already identified the first signs of the trade embargoes and the information war that was about to unfold. Her brilliant mind was already working on countermeasures before the Council even realized their plans had been discovered. Preliminary analysis confirmed what many had already suspected. The Galactic Council was grotesquely underestimating humanity's capacity for adaptation. While its older species relied on established technologies and traditional trade routes, humanity had already developed alternatives for practically everything they tried to deny them. The trade embargoes? The trade embargoes? Humanity had already found ways around them, developing independent supply chains, alternative energy sources, and even new forms of communication that bypassed the Council's monitoring systems. What the Council saw as a means of containment was, in reality, pushing humanity into a corner where innovation could thrive. Every restriction they imposed only led to a new breakthrough. In a matter of months, the humans had begun to reverse engineer the technology they had acquired, creating weapons, ships, and systems that no one, not even the Council, had foreseen. Admiral Hoshino stood at the War Room's strategic board, her eyes scanning the ever-changing data streams. A subtle smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. She had anticipated this. The Council's overconfidence had blinded them to one crucial fact: humanity did not fear adversity. In fact, they thrived on it. What the Council had mistaken for weakness, she now saw as humanity's greatest strength. Every time they attempted to isolate Earth, humanity found a way to turn the situation to their advantage. The time had come to turn the tables. The information war was only one piece of the puzzle. There was another, more dangerous weapon humanity had in its arsenal: the ability to inspire, the sheer will to fight and survive, to push back against impossible odds, was something that could not be quantified by any algorithm or predicted by any strategy. It was something the Council had underestimated from the very beginning. On the eve of a new galactic conflict, Admiral Hoshino made a silent vow. The Council would soon learn what it meant to face a foe who refused to surrender. The battle for the future of the galaxy was no longer just a political struggle. It was a fight for survival, and humanity was no longer just a participant. They were about to become the ones who set the terms. Clandestine trade networks were already being established, with smaller species seeing an opportunity for profit. Information war, the terrestrial counter-narrative systems, perfected over centuries of internal conflicts, were more than prepared for this challenge. With every new attempt at isolation, humanity responded not just by surviving, but by thriving. The High Command meeting lasted for hours, each new report only confirming what Captain Adams had already perceived during his battle with the Peacekeeper. Humanity's greatest strength was not in its technology or resources, but in its fundamental unpredictability. The Council's behavior models, based on millennia of observation of other species, simply could not predict human reactions. Where they expected submission in the face of superior force, they encountered fierce resistance. When they anticipated anger and thoughtless retaliation, they were met with sophisticated strategies and calculated patience. Every attempt to categorize and control humans only revealed new aspects of their adaptability. In the depths of Tartarus Prime, in laboratories rivaling the best research centers in the galaxy, human scientists were already working on technologies that would make the Council question all of its certainties about the limits of what was possible. The Indomitable had not only proven that a single human ship could face the best the galaxy had to offer, it had shown that humanity was ready to take the next step in its evolution as a spacefaring species. Was the Council planning a war in the shadows? They would learn that no one knew the darkness better than those who had spent their entire history fighting to reach the stars. At the deepest levels of Tartarus Prime, in a chamber so secure that its very existence was known only to a select group of individuals, humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's secret war was born. The Ghost Unit, as it was designated, represented something that older civilizations would consider impossible: an elite force capable of operating entirely in the shadows, invisible even to the galaxy's most advanced sensor networks. Its members were chosen not only for their exceptional skills, but for their ability to think in ways that aliens would never understand. Hackers who could navigate alien security systems as if they were children's games, spies who could blend perfectly into any extraterrestrial society, and soldiers who had turned the very limitations of human biology into tactical advantages. While the Galactic Council celebrated the apparent success of its commercial embargoes, it had no idea that every move it made was not only being monitored, but actively exploited by humanity. In secret space docks, scattered across systems the Council's sensors considered uninhabitable, a new generation of warships was taking shape. Based on data collected during the legendary Battle of the Indomitable, these vessels incorporated lessons that would make the Council's most experienced strategists lose sleep. Every flaw the aliens had identified in human technology had been turned into a strategic advantage. Where they saw range limitations, human engineers had developed camouflage systems that made their ships practically invisible. Where they pointed out weaknesses in firepower, humans had created weapons that used the very laws of physics in ways the oldest species considered heretical. The information war, which the Council considered its most powerful trump card, was about to become its greatest vulnerability. Decades of experience with disinformation and counterinformation had prepared humanity for this moment. While the Zelnari and Tariven prided themselves on their carefully cultivated networks of influence, human agents had already infiltrated every level of their operations. Every lie propagated about human brutality was meticulously documented. Every historical distortion carefully traced back to its source. But instead of directly fighting this propaganda, the Ghost Unit had developed a much subtler approach, letting the truth spread naturally, like a virus in a compromised immune system. In an isolated research station, orbiting a brown dwarf, at the edge of known space, human scientists were working on something that would make Grand Arbiter Noltar question his entire understanding of the limits of the possible. It wasn't a new weapon or a revolutionary defense system. It was something far more fundamental. Studying the thought patterns of the oldest species, they had discovered something surprising. Their very technological evolution had made them predictable. Millennia of development along established paths had created blind spots in their perception, vulnerabilities that could be exploited not through brute force, but through the creative application of scientific principles they considered primitive enough not to warrant attention. General Grant reviewed the preliminary reports with a mix of pride and apprehension. The Ghost Unit was already proving its value far beyond the most optimistic expectations. In just a few weeks of operation, they had mapped entire networks of corruption within the Galactic Council itself, identified dissident factions among the oldest species, and made contact with smaller civilizations that had long awaited an opportunity to challenge the status quo. Each new discovery revealed more cracks in the facade of unity and power that the Council had worked so hard to maintain. Humanity wouldn't need to destroy this millennial structure. It would simply apply pressure at the right points, and it would collapse on its own. In the main command room of Tartarus Prime, a new kind of galactic map was taking shape. Unlike traditional representations of territory and resources, this one showed something far more valuable: information flows, networks of influence, and most importantly, points of psychological pressure. Was the war the Council planned to fight in the shadows? Perfect. No one knew darkness better than those who had spent their entire history fighting to reach the light. Every attempt to isolate and weaken humanity would be turned into an opportunity to demonstrate exactly why underestimating Earthlings was the last mistake anyone should make. In the depths of space, far from the watchful eyes of the Council, the true nature of human resistance was beginning to take form. It was not just a matter of survival or defending territory. It was about proving that the future of the galaxy did not belong to those who considered themselves superior due to their antiquity, but to those who never stopped evolving, adapting, questioning. The Council had started this game thinking that their millennia-old rules would guarantee their victory. They would learn the hard way that some species simply refuse to play by rules imposed by others. In the farthest reaches of space controlled by the Human Alliance, something extraordinary was happening. In secret shipyards, hidden within nebulas and asteroid fields, dozens of Indomitable-class ships were taking shape. Each of them incorporated the lessons learned during the legendary battle against the GCS Peacekeeper, but with modifications that would keep the engineers of the Galactic Council up at night. Captain Roy Adams, standing on the bridge of the original Indomitable, watched through the observation windows as his younger sister, the HSS Defiant, conducted her first system tests. The smile on his face was not just one of pride, it was one of anticipation. Did the Council think they had trapped humanity? They had no idea what was coming. At the deepest levels of Tartarus Prime, General Elias Grant presided over a meeting that would change the course of galactic history. Representatives from dozens of minor species, long marginalized by the Council, had responded positively to Earth's secret diplomatic overtures. The Tari Ven, with all their ability to foresee the future, had never imagined that their attempt to isolate humanity would result in the creation of the largest coalition of independent species the galaxy had ever seen. Each civilization brought with it not only resources and technology, but something far more valuable. A burning desire to prove that antiquity was not synonymous with superiority. The Council's trade embargoes, intended to suffocate the human economy, had inadvertently created an entire network of alternative trade routes that were completely beyond their control. The Phantom unit had exceeded all expectations in its initial operations. While the Council boasted about its information warfare, human agents had already infiltrated every level of their structure. Every lie spread about Earth's brutality was meticulously documented and reversed. Every attempt to manipulate galactic public opinion turned into an opportunity to expose the hypocrisy of the ancient civilizations. But the true masterstroke was not in the counter-information operations. It was in how the humans had turned the very secretive nature of this war into an advantage. The more the Council tried to operate in the shadows, the more vulnerable it became to Earth's experts in asymmetric warfare. The technological sabotage planned by the Council had proven to be a spectacular backfire. Forced to develop alternatives to the galaxy's standard systems, human engineers had created technologies that challenged centuries of established knowledge. The Zelnari, who took great pride in their supremacy in electronic warfare, found out the hard way that their invulnerable systems were surprisingly vulnerable to hacking techniques they had dismissed as too primitive to be a threat. Every Asia's attempt to deny access to advanced technologies only accelerated the development of innovative solutions that caught the older species completely off guard. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Adams was reviewing the final readiness reports for the fleet. The new ships were not just copies of the original. They had each been specially modified to exploit different vulnerabilities in the Council's defenses. Some were optimized for electronic warfare, capable of turning the sophisticated alien communication systems into weapons against their own users. Others had been designed for stealth operations, incorporating camouflage technologies that made the Council's best countermeasures look obsolete. But the true masterpiece was the command and control system that united them. A distributed neural network that allowed the entire fleet to operate with a level of coordination that the older species would consider impossible. In the deepest chambers of the Galactic Council, Grand Arbiter Noltar was beginning to realize the magnitude of his mistake. Each report that arrived painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Humanity was not just surviving the attempts to contain it, it was thriving. The same tactics that were supposed to weaken Earth had inadvertently created a force more formidable than any threat the Council had ever faced. It was not just a matter of technology or resources. It was something much more fundamental. The humans had turned every obstacle into an opportunity, every limitation into an advantage, every attempt to isolate them into a chance to forge new alliances. In the vacuum of deep space, as humanity's secret fleet prepared for its first demonstration of coordinated strength, an uncomfortable truth began to emerge. The Galactic Council, in its millennia-old arrogance, had made the most basic mistake possible. They had assumed that their ancient experience meant inevitable superiority. Now, as they helplessly watched the awakening of a force they themselves had helped create, a terrible realization began to take shape. The era of uncontested supremacy by the ancient civilizations was coming to an end. And on the horizon, a new galactic order was being born. a place where the age of a civilization mattered less than its ability to adapt, innovate, and above all, its unwavering determination to never bend before threats, no matter how ancient or powerful they might seem. Can you imagine what will happen when Earth's secret fleet finally reveals itself? Is the Galactic Council really prepared to face not just one, but dozens of indomitable class ships? And what will the next move of the Phantom unit be? But wait, have you ever wondered how all of this started? In the next video, I will reveal the full story of the first human colony the Hazari tried to destroy and how that single miscalculation sealed their fate. You won't want to miss it. If you're as excited as I am about this story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be the first to know when the next chapter of this epic saga airs. Tell me in the comments, what was your favorite part? The destruction of the Peacekeeper or the moment when the Council realized that it had made the greatest mistake in its millennial history?